ancient landscape of Ireland is steeped in myths and legends. Some go back 3,000 years into the mystery of its Bronze Age people. They left behind hoards of extraordinary work in gold, but nobody knows where they found the precious metal to work with. Somewhere in this landscape, was there a secret source of Bronze Age gold? A hidden mine? I've come to Ireland in search of a lost El Dorado. For me, the mystery of Bronze Age gold begins here at a place called Moughaun. Back in 1854, they were excavating a railway here between Limerick and Ennis, when they found something quite extraordinary just up here. Just about here, their digging revealed a box covered in rocks. Inside there was the most fantastic hoard of treasure. Hundreds of bracelets and necklaces, all solid gold. Now some of them, regrettably but understandably, disappeared in workmen's wheelbarrows, but some remains, and this is just one of many such hoards across Ireland. No one's sure why Bronze Age people buried so much gold, though many people believe they were offerings of appeasement to the gods. I had to see the gold for myself, so I went to the National Museum in Dublin. There I met the curator of the ancient treasure, Mary Cahill. So this is the Moughaun hoard. And it's a staggering quantity of material.
Yes, it's the biggest hoard of gold ever found in Ireland, and it must have been an amazing sight for the railway workers who found it to actually see it there in the ground. Hundreds of objects, bracelets and neck ornaments, these collars which we see here, just piled together in one place.
The collection of ancient Irish gold here is quite spectacular. We can only imagine what the elite of Bronze Age society looked like when adorned with the elaborate objects that had been unearthed. Mary took me to a secure back room to see some of the most precious objects. God, these fantastic things. What are they? What is this?
This is called a lumula. It's a crescentic sheet gold collar of the early Bronze Age of about 2000 BC or so.
What about these two, Mary? They look like snuff boxes.
Well, yes, up to very recently we would have thought of these as boxes, but the conclusion that we've reached is that they are in fact ear ornaments, they're ear spoons.
You mean that they actually went inside the earlobes?
Yes, but before you can actually fit it into the lobe of the ear, it has to be pierced and it has to be stretched.
And what is this extraordinary object?
Well, this is called a dress fastener, and although there are some smaller size which probably did function as dress fasteners.
Some dress fastener.
Yes, it sure certainly is. I think this is certainly meant to be a symbol of wealth, a symbol of status and authority and control of resources.
Can I pick it up?
Yeah, yes.
What an amazing thing! What does this weigh?
About a kilo.
A kilo of Irish gold. The beautiful incisions on the inside here, and just the sheer heft of it. Well, I for one would like to know where all this gold came from.
Yes, so would I.
I want to discover if there really was ever a Celtic El Dorado where the Bronze Age people could have got that mass of gold to make those wonderful objects. So I've come to the Wicklow Hills. They became famous in the 1790s for a gold rush. Perhaps gold was discovered here in the Bronze Age too. The gold rush of the 1790s took place just down the road from the little town of Avoca, probably better known as Ballycus Angel of TV fame. So this is where the gold rush was.
Colossal amounts of gold were found here.
Vince Thurkettle is a champion gold panner, and he took me to the scene of the gold rush back in the 18th century. He's sure that Bronze Age people would also have found gold here. Right, that is the gold mine stream.
Yep.
It's where this gold rush...
It is. It's not very big,
Not
but it
very
was
big.
beautiful to the people.
Now, how did gold end up here? I mean, is this the way that all gold appears?
You've got gold deep underground, which you have to mine for. Then sometimes the veins come to the surface and you get outcrops, often where the gold's visible. Then as those outcrops wear and the pebbles and rocks get into the stream, you end up with stream-based deposits. And that's the most likely, I think, that the ancient peoples would have worked.
How would the Bronze Age people have done this?
I think using an old hazel frame like this and sheepskins is exactly the sort of technology they would have used to get it.
Now, what's the sheepskin doing?
The fibres of the wool will trap the gold.
One thinks of Jason with the golden fleece.
Absolutely.
This is what they've been doing in the Middle East as well.
Same sort of period, exactly the same idea. Yeah. Now we've got to build here to get the flow of water coming across it, which is going to take a minute or two.
So all the way down, that's looking pretty good across there.
Yeah, we're nearly there, I think.
With a swift current rushing down it, our makeshift sluice was ready to trap any heavy particles of gold.
So you've got the best job here, because if any nuggets are thrown in, you'll see them, I won't.
I can swiftly pocket them, yeah.
Okay, if we roll this up now, that'll just secure anything that's in there. Oh, God.
Pretty heavy.
This is the tricky bit.
And again, we're relying on the gold being really heavy.
Yeah. That'll do us.
There we go.
Maybe that's our concentrate. Let's have a look what's in it. We're using this swirling.
It looks as if you're losing everything there.
No, we're trying to dump the light material,
Yeah.
but obviously keep the heavy. Okay, now it's getting too delicate
To swirl.
Yeah.
Well, that's the wave technique here.
Yeah. Oh, look. There's gold.
There's. Yes.
Oh, look. Yeah. You've got a little line of dust there.
Real gold dust.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Of course, to make these objects we saw in the Dublin Museum, I mean, they needed lots of gold. And, well, I suppose that they were here first, so there may have been richer pickings, you think, at that time?
Absolutely.
But I wasn't convinced that Bronze Age people would ever have found enough gold at the Gold Mines River. I wanted to get a better sense of just how much gold they would have needed. Nearby in the Wicklow Hills, I went to see gold and silver expert Brian Clark.
I have some nuggets of gold here which would be something similar to what they may have found while they were panning, finding it in the streams.
They would have had little tiny flakes as well.
Little
They put
flakes,
the whole lot
sand,
in.
powder, whatever they found, they put the whole lot together and they melted into a bar effectively.
Right.
I'm going to melt these. Now you can see
it's
starting to melt now.
really
The texture is getting hot.
Slightly bubbly look on the surface.
Surface is moving. You see they're fusing together.
Yeah. Wonderful. Oh, great. Look at that's all one piece.
Yeah. See? Now, I just have to let that cool for a little bit because it's very brittle when it's very hot. I will then quench it in some water because they would have worked it cold.
Right.
Okay? And just...
Brian showed me just how easy and quick it was to shape the cool gold ingot. Within a few minutes he was on his way to making something recognizable.
You can see how this could become this.
That's beginning to look like the start of one of those bracelets that's in Dublin.
Exactly, that's how they would have forged it from the ingot which we have made already. This is a bigger piece, obviously.
And it gives you an impression of how much gold was required and how much was being used.
For the bigger pieces, I mean, it's amazing.
I could see how the Bronze Age metalworkers could have created their treasures. But I was even more convinced that there must somewhere have been richer deposits of ancient gold. Is there any way in which you might locate the source from which this gold came?
I think it may be possible. These alloys have a certain percentage of silver in them, and by matching the quality of the metal in this instance with a specified source, they may be able to compare the two. It's like a fingerprint.
So here was something to go on. The composition of the gold objects is like a fingerprint that could lead back to the source of the metal. I discovered that a project using that idea was now underway, to measure the percentage of silver in the ancient objects in Dublin, and then compare that to the gold you can still find in the landscape. Researchers have been taking samples from Wicklow, as well as other sites across Ireland. One of them is right over on the west coast. Croagh Patrick is the holy mountain of Ireland. Once a year, pilgrims walk barefoot to the chapel on its summit. But I've come to this special place to meet one of the geologists who's been working here, looking for samples of gold. Rob Chapman has already completed his analysis of some of the samples from Wicklow. Have you been able to get any match between the Wicklow's gold and the Bronze Age objects?
No, we haven't so far, which is quite odd because the Wicklows would have been a prime candidate with the amount of gold that was recovered 200 years ago. But in fact, we were a bit more hopeful on Croagh Patrick.
This is a wonderful mountain, and one knows it's sacred to the Christian church now, but it must have been an important place for people in prehistory, don't you think?
Yes, I think so.
I mean, the Bronze Age people were here, and if there were any gold, they would have started to find it.
They'd have picked it up in boulders. Yes, I'm sure they would.
Rob took me to an outcrop of quartz near the top of the mountain. So this is the sort of outcrop you'd be looking in?
This is where we find it, yes. And what we're looking for within the quartz is areas where it looks a little bit browny. Have a look around and see what we can pick up. And what I'm looking for is areas where there's bits of iron staining, because that shows them some iron pyrites there, and the gold is associated with that iron pyrites. So I'm looking for the staining. Hard stuff, this one.
More luck?
Back. Let's come off here, maybe. here we go again. Here's this sort of biscuity colour.
Yes, biscuity. That's the iron as well.
Yeah, that's iron as well, that's right. There's iron going right the way through. That's sometimes quite a good thing to look for. Oh, yeah, there we go. Little tiny bit of crystalline gold lurking in the middle of that porous quartz.
Yeah, I got it. You can see it. Little tiny bit, just sticking at the surface. That's great.
Okay, so our problem now is to get this gold out of this rock. And to do that, you have to go back down again. Bronze Age man would have had a great deal of difficulty crushing the rock down to get the gold out of it. But if you heat treat it first and then quench it, that will make the rock much more brittle. So we can crush it up and pan the gold out.
And this is a technique Bronze Age people could have used.
Absolutely, there's fire and there's water.
Yeah. Rob heated a number of rocks he'd picked up from the mountain.
Charcoal.
Ah, great.
Fun, isn't it? I can still feel it boiling on the other side. Yeah.
So if the water's going in,
It'll be very easy to pulverise. It's changed colour. It's still steaming.
Look at that. This goes right down.
Okay.
Just like a lump of sugar, really.
It is. It's very like sugar. So it's
Hey, look there.
Yes,
that's a lump of gold.
Yes, is it? Coming out. It's little.
Well, lumps perhaps an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. But what you do with this is pan it. In just a few minutes, Rob had separated out the gold from the lumps of quartz.
There's a whole cloud of bits of gold.
Oh yes.
Right the way across.
Yeah. I mean, do you think they could have got massive quantities of gold in this way?
I think they stand a chance of finding far more than we've just done, because there would have been far more available at the time. But whether there's enough to account for the amount of gold in the collection in Dublin is a different matter.
Would they have been able to mine? Would they have been able to go deeper into Croagh Patrick?
Well, not here, because we've already seen that the quartz rock is exceptionally tough, and they didn't have the technology to physically bore a big hole in the mountainside.
But if they couldn't mine here, could they have mined somewhere else? While Rob went to start analysing the silver content of the Croagh Patrick gold, I set off to discover if Bronze Age people knew anything about mining at all. The search led me down the west coast of Ireland to Killarney. Here there was evidence of mining going back 4,000 years. But not for gold. It was for copper, one of the metals they needed to make bronze. I was led to the site by archaeologist Billy O'Brien. When did the Bronze Age people find this site?
Well, several thousand years of settlement and fishing on the lakes during the Stone Age led to the discovery of copper ore deposits here.
We soon came across the same clues in the rock that must have brought the Bronze Age miners here.
Here you can see some of it. You can see these veinlets of green copper ore running through the limestone rock here.
Yeah. This greenish stuff, that's a sign of copper?
It certainly is, yes.
So they would have picked this up. Did they have midges in the Bronze Age?
Absolutely, yeah. Sure they did.
They would have picked this sign up, and they knew about copper working.
This was extracted. Over here you can see some of the Bronze Age mines where that extraction took place. What we're looking at here is a fireworked mine face, radiocarbon dated to around 2400 BC. The extraction technique during the early Bronze Age to get out the copper ore was to light fires up against the rock face, wood fuel fires. That would then weaken the rock face, and the miners would pound it then using stone hammers to extract the mineralized rock.
Good heavens! So that's the only tool they had was a stone axe.
Well, the extraordinary thing is that even though they're making copper, this is a Stone Age technology. They're using stone tools, bone and wooden tools, and the use of fire.
What did they do with it when they sorted the rock out down here?
They probably gathered the copper ore in baskets, and they took it up to begin the process of smelting.
So these people were pretty sophisticated miners. One feels if there were gold to be mined, they would have known how to do it. Do you think there was a gold mine in Ireland?
Well, it's a definite possibility. We know from Ross Island that the technology did exist at that time in the early Bronze Age. The only question now is, can you find enough gold in sufficient concentration that could have been mined? That's the big question.
So might there be places where there was sufficient gold to justify proper mining, hacking away at the bedrock? To answer that, I needed to talk to an expert on how the gold deposits are formed. I headed up to the Sperrin Mountains in Northern Ireland, where there's been recent commercial interest in extracting gold. I arranged to meet Deirdre Lewis, a geologist who knows the area. How does gold get into a landscape and come up on the surface?
Well, of course, these rocks that we're standing on now, Aubrey, were formed 600 million years ago. They were formed in a much more different phase of geological time than we're in now. Very explosive, violent volcanic activity. The gold comes from deep down in the Earth's crust, moving along in fluids which derive from the lower part of the crust, much hotter down there. It rises up along cracks in the rocks, or faults as we call them. Now, as the temperature drops, of course, it's cooling. Where one of these faults or cracks has a little bend or a kink in it, fluids will drop out the minerals out of solution.
Is it like a sort of crystallization process?
Exactly. This is exactly what happens. The fluid, which is laden with silica and various other minerals, form quartz, which is the primary mineral which carries gold with it.
And I've seen gold in veins of quartz on Croagh-Patrick.
Yes, indeed. And of course, Croagh-Patrick is in the same belt of rocks. And along that belt, we know there's gold at various points along that. So if you wanted to find gold, you would follow those cracks or faults. That's where you look for your gold.
So the Sperrins are a good place to look.
They would be a good place to look, but unfortunately we can see here the rocks are actually covered by a layer of peat. So if we were to look for these faults or quartz veins, we would have to look below the peat.
The Sperrins is such a promising place to look that a survey of the rocks just underneath the peat was carried out by Deirdre's colleague, Garth Earls. He then plotted his results on a map. And what do all these dots mean?
This is a sampling of the soil and bedrock itself, and the samples were analysed for gold content, which is what we're looking at, and these red dots. The higher the gold content, the more red the dot is.
Well, there's some pretty intense red around here.
Absolutely, and we can see a distribution over most of the Sperrins here as well, and this particular high spot at a location called Carrignollt.
And that's where a mining company dug an exploratory shaft into the hillside 20 years ago. It now lies abandoned. So how far in are we going, Garth?
Well, this avenue is about 400 metres long, and because we're going on a hillside, the further we go, the deeper we get.
The tunnel was cut to discover just how much gold there was deep underground. What are we looking for here?
What we've just walked along is a quartz vein that contains our pyrite, fool's gold, which you can see sparkling, glittering up there.
Fool's gold is a sign to you that there's real gold there as well.
In this area, in most of the Sperrins, once you find fool's gold, then you can guarantee that there's real gold there associated with it. And about a ton of this rock is worth about $1,000.
So this is pretty good stuff. It really looks goldy, and this would go up like a slice going up to the surface.
And here we're about 35 metres underground.
The Bronze Age people couldn't have got in the way that we are now.
It would have been difficult for them because this is very, very hard rock. They would probably have exploded some of the material on the surface because this vein is exposed in a little stream just above us.
From down here, I could see how mining gold in a bedrock was always going to be difficult in the Bronze Age, because it so often occurs in such hard rock. But if rich veins continued to the surface, then perhaps they didn't need to mine. Here in the Sperrin Mountains, did they find exposed gold-bearing rock on the hillsides? I was keen to catch up with Rob Chapman as he checked the silver content of the samples he collected around Ireland. He'd been comparing these percentages with the silver in the gold objects in Dublin. Well, unfortunately, my latest theory seemed to be wrong. The match with the Sperrins wasn't good. But I was curious now about the gold that we'd found on Croagh Patrick.
Well, this is quite interesting because this machine has told us that the silver content of this particular sample is about 13%. Now 13% silver is compatible with an awful lot of the gold artefacts that you saw in Dublin.
Rob Chapman's work suggests that the area around Croagh Patrick could be the source of more ancient gold than anywhere else. Perhaps that's why it became a revered and sacred mountain. But how did the metalworkers get so much? When we went there, we found just one small gold-bearing outcrop. And then I realised that the answer may lie in something Deirdre Lewis told me about the peat, or upland bog, that covers so much of Ireland. I suspect the Bronze Age people inhabited a landscape that was very different from the one we see now. This landscape must have changed enormously since Bronze Age times. I mean, this lovely valley wouldn't have looked like that, would it?
No, indeed it wouldn't. If we were standing here 3,000 years ago, this would all have been entirely covered by forest. But of course then humans had settled and had developed an agricultural, more sedentary way of life. And as they of course wanted to plant crops, they cleared trees. And also there were climatic changes at the time where the rainfall increased. It became somewhat wetter. So the land became waterlogged, which allowed the peat to form. Yeah. We can see just behind where the trees have been cut, where the bog has developed.
On the rocky landscape, denuded of the trees that soak up water, layers of moss would have grown in the cool, damp conditions. The layers would eventually form the thick covering of peat, which we see today. When they first cut the trees down, much more of the bedrock would have been exposed, I suppose, for a time.
Absolutely, yes.
All these gold-bearing quartz veins would have been more obvious to the Bronze Age people, I suppose.
Absolutely, yeah. The bog now effectively blankets everything.
So that was it. Back then, before the peat formed, any gold in veins at the surface would have been more easily spotted. Today, the peat covers huge areas of Ireland, and there are some places where you can actually see how much peat has built up over the centuries. For me, these wonderful stones reveal more about the prehistoric landscape than anything. These are Bronze Age stones of the Begmore Stone Circle, and they were discovered early in the 20th century when they began cutting peat. At that time, that was all that was to be seen. This was the Bronze Age Earth's surface. Over there you can see the level of the uncut peat. The whole of this area was about 1.5 meters covered in peat. Stripping back thousands of years of peat from the landscape today reveals the scene that would have faced the Bronze Age prospectors. They would have had much more territory in which to search, and at Croagh Patrick and other places too, they would have found rich seams coming to the surface. That also means more gold would have been washed down in streams. So the El Dorado of the Bronze Age turns out to be a scattering of sites rather than a single mine. I'm convinced they would have found all they needed. The Bronze Age people could have got gold from streams and rivers. They could have got them from the quartz veins, which would have been much more easily detected because there wasn't this blanket layer of peat. Over the centuries, they would have accumulated enough gold to be able to display that marvellous craftsmanship which we saw in the Dublin Museum. I expect we'll continue to exploit Irish gold, but I don't think there'll ever be a golden age in Ireland, as there was back in the late Bronze Age.